Hello to everybody and welcome to Kingdom Reflections. I'm your host, Wiley Edwards, and today we're going to be covering the topic of foster care. And I have with me Stephen Hall. Stephen is the executive pastor at North Park Baptist Church in Trussville. He's also the director of the Birmingham Extension Center of the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. But the reason we have Stephen on the podcast today is because he and his wife Kelly have served as foster parents for many years, still involved in foster care ministry today, and we wanted to cover foster care today because we see that as one of the greatest needs that we have as a society, is a need for foster homes. The sad reality is that across America, there are thousands of children that are taken from their homes because of abuse or neglect, and there is not enough foster homes to be able to take all of these children in. To give you a few stats, to give everybody a little context here. In the United States, there are over 400,000 children in foster care and only 214,000 foster homes. In the state of Alabama we're from, there are over 5,900 children in foster care and only 2,300 foster homes. And so the need is great. And my belief is that God is calling the church to be the one that steps into the gap. And the idea that there shouldn't be a waiting list of homes or a waiting list of children who are waiting a home that they need. But instead, there should be a waiting list of families who are ready to welcome in children that are in need. And so my prayer today for this podcast is that it raises the awareness of the need for foster homes. And you and I both understand that not everybody is called to become a foster parent. I do believe that it's a calling that God gives us to be foster parents. But at the same time, I think that everybody can do something to support foster care ministry. And so my hope is that this podcast encourages people to take action in whatever they feel the Lord leading them to do. And I think you're the appropriate guest for this podcast because you and your wife Kelly are actually the reason that Emily and I got involved in foster care. My wife Emily.
Okay. Didn't realize. All right.
Yeah. So my wife Emily grew up in the student ministry, and she was able to witness you and Kelly serve as foster parents. And through that, the Lord put a desire on her heart to be a foster parent. And then the Lord continued to kind of press that desire upon her heart, and she told me about that desire, and then that desire kind of fueled a desire within me. The Lord put that same calling in my life, and then now over the past 5 years we've served as foster parents. And I have this number just because somebody recently asked me, but over the course of those 5 years we've been able to welcome 20 to 25 children into our home for some degree of time or another. And it's been really, for us, it's been an incredible blessing, not only to me and Emily, but also to our kids. And so, one, I want to thank you for the example that you and Kelly set, and then two, I wanted to pick your brain on just some things that we can learn about foster care and what kind of needs are there and what you learned in your experiences. So I kind of told you how we got involved in foster care, and you were a big part of that story, but how did you and Kelly end up getting involved in foster care?
Yeah. Hey, well, first off, thank you for the kind words. Probably too kind,
No.
But it is, man, when you look back at your life and sometimes you try to figure out how you landed in the place that you land. It's an interesting thing to look at. My wife Kelly tells me that when we were dating, she remembers the time and the place where I told her that I wanted to adopt. I don't know that conversation ever existed.
Yeah.
Kelly said that it did, and I trust her. She has way better memory than I do. But we just young married. I was a student minister for a number of years. I've always been a person who likes kids and likes investing and helping kids, whether just from coaching youth sports, soccer, coaching wrestling, hanging out with youth group kids. It seems that the kids who come from hard places have always been the kids that the Lord drew mine and Kelly's heart towards. And so countless stories about that. But now as I look back on my life, I realize that those are things that the Lord was using to draw us into the journey that he called us to. I do know when we were first wanting to have biological children, we went through an infertility struggle. And at that point in time, we thought that we wouldn't be able to have children. The Lord laid on us our idea, the Lord laid on our heart the idea of adoption, and then he didn't open the doors for it. We tried. We ended up on a 5-year waiting list. The doors never opened up. Fast forward all the way to maybe 2010, 11, 12, when things started to, the Lord started opening some doors for us. We went through a foster care parenting class, and then it just looked like the obvious track. Not necessarily for adoption, but for fostering. And, again, now looking back, I see all the markers along the way of how God led us to the place where we landed. But I mean, it's pretty fun to look back.
Right, for sure. So how long did you and Kelly foster for? Are y'all still, just for the audience, still fostering?
Yeah, we fostered our home was open for 6 years,
okay.
And a lot of children, maybe a little over 40 children came in and out of our house for those 6 years. Now, during that time, we had 7 long-term placements. A lot of those were emergency care.
Right.
So that was, but even before that 6-year time period, there's just a wild thing of, back all the way in 2005, I was a student minister at a church where, all of a sudden, DHR dropped off a child who was a hurricane evacuee, at our house. Crazy story altogether. A young lady named Taylor who stayed with us for several months, and so there was, that technically wasn't foster care, but then it actually was. So, but then in addition to those moments, about 6 years. And then, after we adopted, we ended up adopting through foster care. Continued to foster for a while after that. Finally closed our home to taking new children. And then, my wife runs a support group for foster and adoptive parents, and she also serves as a court-appointed special advocate, which is a CASA. Okay. And so that allows us to continue to be an encouragement, continue to do some things in the space of foster care, even though we're currently not foster parents.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kelly and Stephen are both very involved in also putting on a lot of these training classes that Emily and I go to. You have to keep up your certain hours to be able to keep your license, and that's a blessing for us too. So I heard you say something that was really obviously a huge blessing, which is that you got to adopt through foster care. And so my next question was, what is the most rewarding aspect what was the most rewarding aspect for you in fostering?
And well, all right, first off, we our little girl Maya, who is a teenager now, she landed with us. The Lord brought her to us through this process. So no question about it. Maya's precious. Dropped her off at school this morning at the high school. But in addition to that, the Lord in His kindness allowed us to see several just successes. Foster care is tough. There's a lot of things about fostering that's heart-wrenching. It's not easy. There are many times when you're doing foster care, when you're fostering kids, you're helping kids who are going through struggles, so you're walking through those struggles with them. But with that, the Lord allowed us to see some really neat things of reunifications. Again, this is early in the process. There was a little girl named Precia who lived with us, and we were able to work with her birth mom and help her take some steps forward in life. And we were able to partner with that birth family and reunify appreciate her mom, and it was a really beautiful thing. There's a couple of other kids that we were able to work with in the reunification process, which is that's the goal of foster care, is to help put families back together.
Right.
And so the Lord allowed us to see some really neat things there. Another one, there's a young man who came to live with us, and man, it was tough days at first, but great kid. And while he was in our home, got involved in our student ministry. It was beautiful how the student ministry here at our church accepted him, even though he was a little different from them. Accepted them, became friends with him. He gave his life to the Lord while he was a part of our church.
Right.
And then another, just a beautiful, you say rewarding thing, a beautiful thing. He connected with extended family. But there was one Sunday morning where that extended family that we became friends with, they drove in from out of town, and I got to baptize him.
Oh wow!
With them, standing with me,
Right.
next to me as we baptized him. And it was just a really, really special thing, seeing not only him move to a stable home, a loving home, but not only that, a Christ-centered home, a home where he went and he was very, very involved in the church that they were connected to in South Alabama. But then also we got to see his faith journey begin, and just that spiritual marker in his life. So
right.
Yeah, incredible, and I could go on.
Right.
I mean, just a lot of rewarding things that we've seen. At the same point in time, let me not sugarcoat it. Man, foster care is hard.
It's tough, for sure.
There's a lot of hard things about it, but there is some significant rewarding moments throughout the years.
Yeah, and I want to talk about some of the challenges too. But before we get there, you said something I think that was important, which was you talked about the goal of foster care, and the goal of foster care being reunification.
Right.
How important is that for people who go into foster care to have that mindset that reunification is the goal? Because we've been foster parents for 5 years. It is true that you grow attached to the kids,
Right.
but you do always have to keep that perspective in mind, that the goal, what I'm doing is I'm serving a purpose to help support this child and raise up this child while a family member is getting some things taken care of that he or she needs to get taken care of so that they can be reunified with their child. But how important is that perspective to have when you go into foster care?
And that mindset, it changes everything. It's not, when I invest in a kid's life, I can't fix a kid.
Right.
I can't fix anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not my. The goal is, hey, I want to help this kid. I want to help this kid's family. I've heard, and you've probably heard people say, hey, I couldn't do foster care. I would get too attached.
Right. I've heard that many times.
Yeah, that's a sweet sentiment, but it's
It is
pretty much garbage.
It is sweet sentiment, but then you think about it, and I get attached to kids too, right?
Yeah, in the same way. I mean, when I've coached youth sports for years, and you coach a kid in a sport. Well, yeah, you get attached to the kid. That doesn't mean he or she's not going to go play for another coach at another time.
Right.
It's all about the moments in life that God gives us to invest in people, and so through fostering, we have a moment that God gives us to invest, not just in a kid, but in a family. And it's the mindset of, it's not just the kid's life that I want to help. It's through this process I want to let the Lord God minister to that mom or that dad. And again, not fixing anybody. It's not that I'm this great fixer of people and I can fix them, but no, it's that I can help them, figure some things out, help them take some steps towards a right and a good way of living that provides some stability for their child. And again, we've seen some really special reunifications. Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean that all of a sudden, the kids, all this, they reunify with their family and you have a storybook ending. One of the first child that we ended up bringing into our home, it was a beautiful reunification story with a grandmother. We tried to, keep up. You just, through Facebook, we found, I guess she was about 11 when she reunified with her mom. She had, or with her grandmother. The child had such terrible trauma from her early growing years that she never was able to shake it. And she committed suicide when she was about 18. I remember the moment when Kelly and I, we found that through, just found it online and found the information about it. It was terrible, but it doesn't mean that the work that we did in her life was all for naught.
Right.
It's again, in that moment, we were able to invest the love and the life of Jesus in her life, and
Right.
and see, again, we're able to work towards that reunification of family, and in that moment there were good things. That doesn't mean that everything's perfect in the end.
Right.
But again, man, God doesn't promise that for
No,
any of the people that we connected with and we're around.
Right. So that's obviously something really challenging that you and Kelly had to go through. That's something that was really challenging that her family also had to go through.
Yeah.
How does your faith sustain you in difficult times in regards to challenges surrounding foster care? Mm-hmm. What role does your faith play in emotional stability, really?
You said it well. I mean, faith, our relationship with Jesus is everything. Mm-hmm. It is that sustaining part that we couldn't do it without it, because some of it is there's a motivation of we're sharing our life in the love of Jesus with kids because of what Jesus has done in our lives. Mm-hmm. And so there's that part of we're following his lead, and he sustains us in moments where we couldn't in and of ourselves. And that's, there are many hardships that you walk through that are just heartbreaking, mm-hmm. frustrating. Again, when you work in foster care, you're working in a broken system. Mm-hmm. And typically, like when things are broke at my house, I want to fix them.
Right.
Like, let me get some tools. Let me. That's our. It's not just my nature. It's not our. That's what we do. Right. We try to fix broken things. When you work in the foster care system, it's a broken system. It's a tough system, and you can't fix it. But there's where the Lord's presence sustaining through that, giving perspective, giving encouragement, giving rest, even in the moments where you just want to punch a brick wall.
Right, for sure.
And those moments come.
Those moments come. Yeah. I remember there were times where I would sit back and I would wonder to myself, what are we doing? Like, why did we get involved in this? So one of the first places we had a sweet little girl, incredible. It was during COVID, and so we never left the house. It was that time where you never left the house, and we had all kind of kids running around our house, and she fell and got a little scrape on her arm, and it should have been something that you would think she would get over in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't a big incident, but it was 3 hours of tears, and I remember thinking at that point, we were trying everything that we could do to console her and to get her, to be in a better frame of mind, but none of it was working. And I remember thinking there, being stressed, being overwhelmed, what do we do? Did we like bite off more than we can chew? Did we get into something that we're unable to handle? And then I remember just kind of a sense of the Lord's calming presence that he's calling someone to take on this challenge, right? He's calling someone to take on this responsibility, and he was calling me and Emily to be there for her, to be there for her in whatever trauma she had experienced, to help her kind of walk through some of that. And I think faith, our faith is what gives us assurance that ultimately God is in control too. It's hard to get involved in foster care without understanding that ultimately God is the one that's in control. Because if you don't have that, you're not always going to get the outcomes that you want in foster care.
That's right. Well, along with it, foster care will wreck your family. And I mean that of like there are tough things in our marriage that we've walked through, just because when you're walking in a tough situation, and hard situations are hard to walk through.
Right.
And you're bringing hard situations into your home. But when I say foster care will wreck your family, I mean sometimes being wrecked in a good way. Of is it going back to there was a kid once that came, and I mean just a hard thing. I remember my older kids were in their early teenage years. We had a kid that came in that would come around my kids' friends, and the kid just spit a lot, like in public, socially unacceptable.
Right.
And I remember my kids were like, "What in the world? Like, how do we do with this?" We're like, "Hey, kid, quit spitting in public.
Right.
You're like, you can't spit at school. Don't spit at our kids' friends or our kids."
Right.
And it was just, it was comical, but also, it was a real. Like if you're an 11-year-old kid,
that's something that would stress a mother out too.
Yes.
We had a.
Yes.
I'll let you continue here, but we had a little kid, 2-year-old boy, and whenever he would ride in the grocery car, at the grocery store, he would just scream, and it was a loud squeal. He wasn't upset. It was just his way of communicating was a loud squeal.
Right. So it
got to the point, and that is the reason why we have Target pickup right now.
There we go.
Because Emily was like, I'm not.
Yeah, because Emily's going to feel like a loser of a mom
anymore when this kid's just squealing the whole time. But yeah.
Well, in that situation, I mean, just like it was so cool to see how the friend group that our kids have were loving and accepting in that situation, which is that's a super success story. But then but through the hardships, what I see, I say it'll wreck your family in a good way. Man, there's an emotional, spiritual maturity that the Lord led Kelly and I into, still leading, not there yet, because of the process we walked through. But then with we've got 3 biological kids and then adopted. We've got 4 kids. All of our kids have talked about, have thought about wanting to be in one day when they can, helping in adoption or foster care or things like that. And so it's hard, but sometimes that wrecking, that going through hardships makes you realize that you develop an empathy, you develop a compassion that you might never have developed.
Right.
My kids have a compassion for the least, for kids, for people coming from hard places in a way that they may not ever have had we not walked through all the years of fostering.
Right, and that was one of the hesitancies that me and Emily had initially around foster care. Was we were thinking about our kids. What kind of impact would this have on our kids to have someone in your house for a year, and then that person leaves to be reunified with another family? What kind of impact will that have on our children? And I remember your wife Kelly said something that she said that people have come to her and talked to her about that before, but that her response is, well, I can't imagine my kid's not going through this, right? My kid's not having experienced this. And for us, that stuck out to us because it does. That firsthand account gives you a level of, one, understanding the reality of what people face.
Right.
And then, 2, it gives your kids a sense of compassion for people and a sense of gratefulness for the situation that they come from, and a desire to be a part of helping people get into better situations. So that was something that when she said that, it kind of, that clicked for us. We wanted our kids to be able to experience that, and we want our kids to be able to have that kind of perspective. And we pray, and I think it's by God's grace that our kids really haven't been negatively affected by foster care. Now, I think there are some challenges that foster care presents for biological kids, in the sense that, man, they grow attached, and then our kids have grown really attached to our current placement, and we don't know what the future holds with him, but if he were to go off, there would definitely be some sadness there, and maybe even some, some degree of trauma there, right? That someone that they love is leaving. But I think the benefit of them being able to understand the situations that some people come from does provide a level of compassion that they wouldn't have without having a firsthand experience to it. So for us, man, foster care has been an incredible blessing to our kids. And one of the things that we want to communicate to them from the very beginning is that, hey, this is whoever is with us, and he's here to stay with us for, some amount of time. But he has his family, but he's also, we're going to treat him like he's a part of our family while he's with us, because he is. He's a part of our family. While he's under this roof, he's a part of our family, and he'll always really be a part of our family. But at some point, he even has another family that loves him, and he's gonna go back to that family. So we try to give our kids that mindset, that perspective from the get go, that so they have a understanding of what will eventually happen.
Yeah. Try to prepare for that expectation of,
right.
Hey, our goal, which goes back to that goal of reunification. We would talk with our kids of, hey, our goal here is to help, whatever the kid's name, help him or her connect with their biological family if that's possible.
Right, and our kids pray each night. Praying for whatever child is with us. They pray for the family of the child.
That's sweet.
Who's with us.
Yeah.
And, they pray that, hey, this child can go back to this family, soon. Mm-hmm. And we pray that his mom gets better, and that, this child can go see his mom.
Wow, that's such the habit that you're creating in that, just that habit is teaching your kids to look outside of themselves. I mean, that's excellent.
Yeah,
because they're praying. It's not just about their day, what they've got going on, but they're praying for, hey, this is a situation connected to me, and I'm praying for this person in that.
Right. And I'll be honest with you, there are times sometimes where that prayer is hard. I mean, that's.
Oh yeah.
That's I'm sure over y'all's years fostering, for us, we haven't adopted. There have been some instances where it looked like there was the prospect of adopting in the future that never really came to fruition. And then, your kids are praying, hey, I pray that, this child that's with us can go back to their mom, saying, and you have to check your heart, and you have to, that's a John Chris line, by the way. I shouldn't check your heart. I think he says that. But anyway, it's true though. You got to check your motivation.
Yeah.
And make sure that, you have, because the goal is reunification.
Yeah.
We want to see, broken families restored, and, sometimes that's not always God's plan. Sometimes
and also
God's
the
plan
reunification sometimes isn't, some of our emotions are in play where, kid comes into our house and, we realize how despicably evil the either the dad or the mom, and there's a point in time, sometimes you're trying to reunify with family, but maybe not mom and dad. I mean, that's
right. Yeah.
That was a situation of
reunification. Most of ours haven't gone back to parents.
Going back to a
They've
grandparent.
grandparent.
Which is can be beautiful in those situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, good deal. Well, let's kind of shift gears here. How has foster care shaped your perspective on society?
It's when, I'll say it this way, we would like to walk through society thinking that normal is everybody has their stuff together, everybody's doing pretty much okay. There's a lot of the forgotten of society that we would like to just push out of our mind. It's almost like we don't want to see it as a society, and whether that's people with people who come from hard places, people who have mental disabilities, people who have other physical struggles that just stay in the shadows of our society. And we would like to, there's a tendency within us to want to only focus and think about people who are what we would consider normal, but we're defining a normalcy that doesn't include all of those broken segments of society, those broken people from tough places. And when you're thinking about foster care, you're opening yourself up to seeing things that you've never seen before.
And not just seeing things, but also like being a part of things.
That's right. Yeah, you're
stepping into the situation.
Right. Yeah, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't unsee the hurt, the trauma, the struggle that's around us, and that shifts your focus in life. We need as a society, we need to help those that would be considered the least of these. And there's multiple ways that you can think of somebody who's the least of the, just people from hard places, people with disabilities or not the same advantages that you and I both grew up in homes that love the Lord, that follow the Lord. That's very uncommon.
I mean, those statistics are real about children who've grown up in broken homes, whose children end up in foster care.
Yes.
It's a cycle.
Yeah. Yep.
And what you're saying is so true. It opens your eyes up to people's actual realities. I think for us, it can be really easy to, we see the statistics, but then when you get involved in foster care, you are able to put a name and a face, with that statistic. You're able to see the backstory.
Yeah.
And I think what you said, talking about how it makes you aware of people's needs, that's why I feel like God is calling His church to respond to foster care. I think about one of the stories in the Bible that I'm reminded of is the story of the Good Samaritan, the parable of the Good Samaritan, who comes across a man who's in need, and he stops and he helps the man. He goes above and beyond to help take care of the man. And for us, this foster care, that's part of what we want to do, this podcast. We want to make people aware of the need, and then people to respond to the need. That may not mean being directly involved in foster care ministry, but maybe
there's a lot of ways to help. Yeah,
it means being involved in some kind of ministry that helps prevent children from ending up in foster care. But there's a lot of things that you can do. What you can't do is not do anything, not take action. Think that, like the other two, that I'm too busy. I got more important stuff to go and do, and walk past the need. So part of what we want. It's easy
to walk past the need if you are living your life in a way so that you never see the need.
Right, exactly.
And unfortunately, that's the way a lot of our society is set up. It's set up so that we're able to move through our lives only thinking about ourself and our self pleasures, entertainment, whatever things for me and my immediate people around me.
Right.
And when I live my life in that way, that's the opposite of the life that God has called us to live. God's called us to live a life of investing in others, of being a blessing to others, of being open to helping others.
And we know that we know that through His Word, and we also know that through the example of His Son, Jesus. Right? That's what Jesus did when Jesus came and He lived His life. He was aware of the people's needs around them, and He met the needs of the people around them, both physically and spiritually.
That's right.
What has foster care taught you about children? Because for me, it's taught me a lot about children. But I want to hear your answer first. What has foster care taught you about children?
Foster care, I mean, obviously there's continual trainings that you have to do, and some of those trainings you're like, oh, why do I have to do this? And then you do the trainings, you're like, I
needed that.
I'm probably a better parent because of some of those things.
Right. You see it in your own biological kids.
Absolutely. I mean, again, through foster care, we ended up with a lot of counselors coming in, meeting with kids, counselors coming in, meeting with us and kids. And because of that, there's just a lot of just parenting skills, kid skills, of things that it's not just that I see and understand kids better. That most certainly is a key thing, but it's also that I react and I lead kids better than I did before.
I'm always struck by the resilience of the kids.
Yeah.
Because you hear a lot of really kids that come from really, really difficult situations. And I think about my 4-year-old little girl right now. She is like a mama's girl, and she loves me too. But when Emily and me are together, she's all about Emily, and I want her to be all about me.
Right.
Yeah, she's my little girl.
Yeah.
But she's all about Emily. And I think about the kind of trauma that it would be on her if she was taken out of the context that she's in right now and put into someone who is a complete stranger.
Unimaginable.
She has no idea who she
Yep.
is. And how she would be able to deal with that, and it's hard to really imagine or grapple her like being able to deal with that. But then I see kids that come into our home who are coming from that exact same reality, and the resilience that they have is remarkable. And I see the Lord's protection over those children in that way, that they can come from such trauma and be able to still have so much joy and to still be a kid, to be silly and to play with your kids and
absolutely
to run around. And then you see that. I mean, it's not that they're ignoring the trauma. You see the trauma that they have. They carry it with them, and you see it in certain behaviors. But man, God has made kids so resilient.
Yeah.
And their ability to bounce back is really kind of an inspiration. And it's also a testament to God's love and care for them. That He made them in such a way that even that they are vulnerable, but their ability to bounce back from hard things. And God's taught me a lot about that. So
absolutely. I hope Maya doesn't get mad at me for telling the story. The day that she came to live with us, she was 6 years old. It was in January, and Kelly picked her. Kelly met the DHR caseworker, and it was a Wednesday, and so she came straight to church on a Wednesday night, North Park, to our church, and she came straight here, and so she was just chatterbox. And she still is. Right. She's a lot of fun to be around. And so she was just chatterbox, talking. And Maya's African American. She was asking Kelly questions. She was like, "Hey, so the church we're going to, are there people like me?" And of course, Kelly was like, "Okay, yes, we have black people and white people." And then kind of through the conversation. Just kind of realized, okay, there are more white people at our church.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, Maya had a kind of grin, on her face, and she looked at Kelly and she said, "They're gonna think y'all stole me." And it's just, of course, Kelly lost it.
Right.
But again, that resilience of even on what was a really hard day.
Right.
God, and again, Maya had a super fun time at church that night, and just so many good things since then. Not that life isn't hard,
right?
But the Lord gives a resilience to kids, and you see His watch care over children.
Right,
it's
for
beautiful.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, so foster care also, it teaches you a lot about children. Also teaches you a lot about family. How has foster care impacted your view on family?
Yeah, family. I think sometimes we think that for our families to be good, we've got to control every aspect about it. And if we're honest about it, that's something you can't do.
Yeah, you can't do it. That's a losing battle.
It's a losing battle.
Right.
What foster care has taught me about family is that when, as a family, you choose to follow the call that God's put on your family, He causes good things to happen. He guides the mom, the dad, and the family. He guides the kids. The Lord, we can trust the Lord to guide our steps, and we can trust the Lord to guide our kids' steps.
Right.
And so, walking through all that we walk through, we can trust in Him as we follow Him.
Yeah, I mean, leading a family, what does it mean to lead a family?
Yeah.
Leading your family to trust that God is in control.
That's right.
Leading the family to, follow God's instruction for your life, His calling for your life, and to trust that ultimately He's the one that is in control of the future. All right, let me ask you this question. What misconceptions do people have about foster care?
Misconceptions. I guess one, we've mentioned that, hey, I couldn't do it. I love kids too much. I couldn't let them go back.
You don't love kids at all. That's why you do.
Which is a funny aspect. The misconception of I guess there's several ways. Many times when we walk into anything in life, we walk in with a naive mindset. Sometimes, that naive mindset can be, hey, I'm going to get in here and I'm going to fix some kids. No, that's a misconception. Or that naive mindset of, hey, we've adopted through foster care. That wasn't the goal going in. We knew that maybe, hey, if that happens at some point in time, we'd be open to that.
Right.
But, if you go in with a misconception of, hey, we're going to foster to adopt, and that's going to be our goal from the beginning. That's not the goal of foster care. The goal of foster care is helping kids and helping families, helping people, families be put back together on the right track.
Right.
So I would say some people walk into foster care not realizing that that's hard. It could be a misconception, but man, people do that with parenting also.
Right.
Like I remember when we got pregnant with our first child with Sydney, I remember thinking, oh, this is just going to be great. And
it's going to be a breeze.
It's going to be parenting's not easy.
It never gets easier.
But it's beautiful.
I got, my oldest is 8, and I'm wanting it to get easier, but I hear it never gets easier.
Yeah, it gets harder.
It gets harder.
But it's good. It's good.
Right.
But it gets harder.
When you get that first baby, and you take it back from the hospital.
Yeah.
Him or her, they don't give you an instruction manual.
No.
You got to figure it out on your own. And when you're at the hospital, the nurses all are like there 24/7.
Yeah.
There's no like weaning off of like the nurses' support.
Nope.
It's just all of a sudden.
Good luck.
And you're driving the baby home, and it's your job to take care. One that I've heard a lot of people say, and it's kind of along those same lines of, I wouldn't be able to get the child back, is they say, to me and Emily, oh, you guys are so special for doing that. I couldn't do it. You got to be special to do that. I couldn't do that.
It's tough when people,
because it's
kind of lift
so
us up
kind.
as if we're superhuman.
Right.
Like, oh, you guys are just, man, you're a foster parent. You must be a special version of holy. And you're like, no.
Nah. Yeah,
if you look at my family, like we're normal people.
Right.
We have all the struggles that you have. We, we yell at our kids and we yell at each other when we don't mean to. It's all of those things that you're a superhuman. I couldn't do it because you're so special as a superhuman. You're the only one who can do it.
Yeah.
That's
that's not the way it is. And that's something I feel like people need to hear, because some people may be thinking, I can't do it. That's really hard. I can't do it. The reality is, they don't need perfect people to do it.
Right.
They need, I think, you need people that love the Lord. They're going to teach kids to love the Lord. And then I think that the biggest thing is you just being available. You know, make yourself available. Be there to fill that gap. You know, you're not perfect. I'm not perfect.
Right.
Nobody's perfect. But we need people that are willing to step up and be able, and to take on the challenge. It is a challenge, but at the same time, Lord equips His people for the challenges that He calls them to.
Absolutely.
And so that's one that I heard. And then I guess kind of the other one is the one that we talked about, and we've talked about it, the grow to attach. Well, those kids need. That's what those kids need.
Yeah.
Is they need
right.
somebody to attach themselves to. And so, when you say you're afraid that you'll grow too attached to a child, well, that means that you're just succeeding in what the child needs. The child needs attachment. And you may not be with that child forever. That child may be reunified. But if you're attached to that child, then at that time span that you're with that child in that child's life, he had somebody or she had somebody that she could be attached to.
Yeah.
That she
You're modeling your
that she
teaching
wouldn't have
behavior.
had.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, think of a really good second grade elementary school teacher. I mean, the kids grow attached to that teacher.
Right.
That doesn't mean that teacher stays with them for
forever.
third grade, fourth grade, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. It means that teacher was used by God to create a special moment. And it's in moments like that God transforms and directs our path. And we in foster care, you can create some special moments for kids and for families. Right.
Absolutely. All right. So if we were to boil down, what do children need? And we could talk about children in foster care, but just in general, I think this applies to all children because children in foster care are children. What is it that children, they have tons of different needs, all sorts of, kids have specific needs but if you were to generalize, what does a child need?
They need to be around people who love them, which is that they need to know about the love of the Lord and be around people who love them. They don't need a perfect situation. They don't need a perfect house. All of those things that we strive towards, it's not that they're bad.
Yeah.
It's bad to strive toward a nice house and a nice place for a kid to live, but more than any of that, they need to be around people who care for them. And which goes back to, I don't have to have so many things right in my life to show compassion and care for a kid.
Yeah. All right, good stuff. Let me ask you this now. What has foster care, so we talked about what has foster care taught you about family, what has foster care taught you about kids, what has foster care taught you about the Lord?
A lot. In caring for kids, we see the heart of Christ, because fundamentally God demonstrated his love for us. Romans says that while we were apart from Him, while we were sinners, while we were away, Christ died for us. He showed love first, and so we see that heart, the heart of God for people who who are struggling, just a heart of God for people. And so when we're doing what we do, working with kids, working with families, with parents, it's when you do the work of Christ with Him, you can't help but to learn of the Lord.
Yeah.
Learn of the Lord.
Good stuff, man. I think foster care is it's a beautiful picture of the gospel.
Yeah.
And not that our intentions are always. Sometimes we can slip into, not always having the right intentions sometimes. But I think at the heart of foster care, what you see is, you want to give of yourself, you want to invest yourself into, someone else who on the surface doesn't really, you may not think really has anything to give you in return, but what you end up learning is that they bless you in so many ways that you would have never thought imaginable. But it's the idea of giving yourself, investing yourself into someone else, and and then in y'all's case, in the picture of adoption,
Yeah.
that's not always, that's not the goal necessarily of foster care. The goal is reunification, but sometimes, a placement moves into a time where adoption takes place, and that's a beautiful picture of what God does for us. That God welcomes us into His family, and it's not based off of anything that we do. It's not based off of anything that any of our accomplishments or what we have or anything like that. But it's just because God has chosen to bestow His love upon us, and He sacrificed Himself for us. And foster care gives that picture, of I'm choosing to welcome this child into our family, and and that child is his family, he or she is a part of our family as much as my other children, right? Or your other children.
Yes.
So it's that picture of adoption.
Yeah, I remember when we were at at the court adopting Maya. The language was exactly that of the judge. Just looked at Kelly and I and said, "Hey, listen, you understand, this child will be yours in the same way." Named our other kids that they are your children. Right. Like there's not
anything.
Yeah, there's not like I've got my kids and then there's not a tier of children.
Right.
It's Sadie. We've got a biological daughter named Sadie who's just about 5 months older than Maya. They're both our children fully in every way.
Right.
So it does. When you see that, and then you think about our relationship with the Lord our God, and how we've been adopted into His family, you can't help but just stand in awe of the Lord.
Special. What would you say to Christians who feel called to foster but they're hesitant to do so?
There's a lot of ways to get involved. There's a lot of ways to help, to be a blessing, and it's kind of like getting into a swimming pool. I mean, there are moments where you just jump off the diving board into the deep end.
Right.
But also, I mean, hey, go hang out on the steps in the shallow end.
Right.
Be a blessing. Even from simple things of once a month we're looking for childcare for a foster care support group. Yeah. I mean, there are opportunities.
Lots of ways that she can get involved.
There are lots of ways to be a blessing, whether than blessing foster families. There are so many good ways where people can be a part of the process, whether or not their home is open to foster children or not. They can be a part of the help and the blessing.
Yeah, that's good. And if you know someone, I would encourage anyone who's interested in foster care, if you know someone who is fostering, go ask them to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, that's right.
We just had a couple that recently asked me and Emily to go get breakfast and talk about foster care, and we hadn't been able to do it just yet, but we plan on doing it. And I think that's something where you can learn a lot just from the people who are involved in it. And I know me and Emily learned a lot from you and Kelly in that regard. So, there's a great need for foster care. And, I think that, like I said at the beginning, not everybody is called to become a foster parent, but everybody is called to get involved in, I believe that everybody's called to get involved in some degree or another in helping these children. And whether that's in some other type of ministry or whether that's in specifically a foster care ministry, we all are called to be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah.
So, hey man, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I appreciate your insight, and we want to have you back on at some point for sure.
I appreciate what you're doing, not just as a foster parent, but in podcasts like this, helping spread awareness, not just awareness, but man, foster care is rewarding, beautiful, exciting, really tough. It's all of it.
Right.
Thing to be a part of, and you're just championing that cause. I'm thankful for it. Like there's incredible ways to, we're for people to get connected and get involved, and I appreciate the work.
Yeah, I mean, I think about all the kids that have come through our home and all the kids that come through your home. there's so much joy out there for people if they step into this realm, if they're called to.
Right.
Hardship, yes, but also a lot of joy. And so we want to elevate that need. And so this is, our sixth episode of Kingdom Reflections, talking about foster care. Hey, and we would love for you, if you enjoy this podcast, like it, share it, and do me a favor and share this. We're trying to get the awareness out there about the need for foster care. So be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family, and we'll see you next week.